So welcome to everyone. Welcome to this session of Build Security and New Technologies, our brand new session of our conference. Let me briefly introduce the distinguished speakers we have. Luca Bragoli worked since 2005, so more than 15 years now, or 15 years now in the R Group, where he had first the role of Head of Personnel Management and Legal Affairs, and now Institutional Affairs Manager. Before, with a Master in Business Administration, he worked in community funding and as a lawyer with a partner, and with a partner in the Barazzi Partners firm. Then Matteo Codazzi, to my right, he's a CEO of CESI. He graduated in economics at Lewis University in Rome, which is the second best business school after Bocconi. Right? Everybody's perfect. I'm graduated from Bocconi and I teach at Lewis, so I know both schools.
I'm an alumnus of Columbia.
He's but then I wanted to say, but then he's an alumnus of Columbia University in New York and the last general management program. And it's been almost 10 years now CEO of CESI. CESI is, for those of you don't know, maybe it doesn't need a presentation, but let me remind you, CESI is essentially the equivalent to Italian EPRI, no? It is essentially, the European I should say, is the best research center for electricity technology and equipment and advancement that we have in Italy and we think in Europe. It's one of the best in Europe. He was before in Enel, the Italian electricity company, before the privatization, before then in Finmeccanica. And let me tell you that the technology of CESI is now spread all over the world, even in forefront countries like Saudi Arabia, for instance. Because everybody knows how to go to the Emirates, that's an easy market, but Saudi Arabia is a much more difficult market, and he made a joint venture with the Saudi government and had the privilege to assist with the signature. That's why I know this area. Last but not least, Agostino Rebaudengo has been managing renewable energy assets for over 20 years. His company, Italia, which is set up in 1995, is leader in his field in this market, and he has offices in China, South America. He has such a long curriculum that I have to shorten it for these important roles. In 2012, he founded the Rema Capital. In 2013, has been member of the Italian Employer Association Confindustria. Started his career as a consultant in Anderson Consulting, and then CEO in important events. He has a degree of economics from the University of Turin and had also a master's from the Harvard Business School. He's also Cavalier, Knight Commander of the Italian Republic in 2007. So, as you can see, we have a very distinguished panel. I leave all of you free to present your ideas and your concepts to this distinguished audience. What we like to achieve, as you know, in this type of conferences, to have a confrontation between us academics from the university and many academicians that we have presented, technical, mathematical models perhaps, and the real world experience that you manage and that feed our ideas for a dual relationship. Okay, so that will be very interesting. If you don't mind, I will use the alphabetical order, because you are also at the table. If you want to use the presentation, you can actually stand up, use this microphone like this, and you have the touchpad to manage the slides.
Cable è sempre questo.
Sì, ci vuole sostegno.
Infatti, that's good.
In a digital
world,
a cable is always...
Good?
Yes.
Good. I won't sing for you. Good. So let me introduce my company. We have 8 years of history, and I've prepared 80 pages of presentation for you, so it will take a long, something like 2 hours. So we have been refining operators for 70 years. That's our story. 70 years in the oil business, and then a change of business. In 10 years, we moved from the oil sector to the power sector with a strong focus on renewables. And here you can see our current assets: wind, hydro, PV, and natural gas. This is our geographical location. We were a pretty domestic company. Now we have a European location where we are present in 6 countries other than Italy. So we are in Bulgaria, Poland, Romania, and UK, France, and Germany. These 3 countries are the countries that we have targeted for growing in the next years, according to our recent business development plan. Our portfolio, it's a portfolio strongly characterized by renewables. Renewables which have a characteristic of being complementary and in order to cope with one of the problems we will talk about later of the renewables, which is intermittency. Not all renewables, but the new ones. I mean the solar and the wind. This is just some slides of our recent history, and this is a focus on our business plan. As I was saying, we are envisaging to grow mainly in the wind sector, in the sun, and we have 3 important layers, 3 important drivers of growth for the next years. The first one is the repowering of the current existing assets we have in Italy. We have more than 1 gigawatt of installed capacity in Italy. And then to grow, as I was saying, in UK, France, and Germany. Why these 3 countries? Because these 3 countries are the ones with the most stable regulatory framework, and that's why we are focusing on these countries. Let me say that, for us, repowering is a great, a wonderful chance for developing renewables in Europe and Italy in particular. Why? Because repowering has a plus, which is the fact of bettering and increasing the installed capacity in the production of green energy while using the same land in comparison to the old plants, which is really important. Again, this is our plan. As you can see, we plan to grow to 1.35 thousand megawatt of installed capacity in 2022. Let's talk about the scenario. What we see in the coming years. We see, and as we know, it's not only our SEN, the strategic national plan, but also the clean energy package. We see that we will have in the power sector an increasing number, an increasing quantity of renewable energy. At 2030, over 60% of electricity consumption would come from renewable energy. That is a target that we will have in order to reach the target of limiting the global warming below the 2 degrees. This target implies that in countries like Italy, we will have an incredible growth of 2 sources. This is not only our scenario, but the scenario of the SEN. The 2 sources are solar and wind. According to recent studies, to reach the 2030 target, we would need something like 5 gigawatt of new installed capacity in wind and PV from now till 2030. I mean, 5 gigawatt per year, which is an incredible amount. As you know, nowadays in these years, the installed capacity in Italy have been really limited because there were not supporting mechanism. So this challenge that we have implies that variable renewable energy will have to be integrated in the power sector, in the power system. What we need for this, we need the bottlenecking plan for the national grid, energy storage, digitalization, peaking plans, and redesign of the electricity regulation. So the key word for coping with this growing quantity of electricity in the years to come, till 2030, is flexibility of the system. This is what we really need. Flexibility, which means strengthening the grid and smartening the grid, not only the transmission system, but also the distribution system. There is a huge debate nowadays, and it will be a growing debate in the years to come over the cost of this variable energy. There is a cost that is implied in the penetration of renewable energy. It is the result of coping with flexibility. But as we see, also with cost of flexibility, the renewable energy, the intermittent renewable energy, is the solution for the decarbonization. There are no other reliable solution. Just few concepts to limit my intervention. As we have seen, the decarbonization asks us to cope with incredible challenges. For facing this and reaching the targets that we have, in our view, repowering is one of the drivers that we have, one of the leverage that we have, and it is essential. That is why we have highlighted and made repowering one of the main drivers of our business plan. EU countries will have to integrate high shares of variable renewable energy in the coming years. And this full integration of variable renewable energies requires flexibility of the electric system. This means strengthening and smartening of grids. This means storage system, peaking plants, and regulation design, including market regulation design, which is something that has to be properly modified in the future. Only following this holistic approach, so only working on all these aspects in an integrated way, we'll have the possibility to actually implement, to deploy the volumes of renewable energy that we need in order to cope with our challenges, and so to fight against the climate change and to reach a really decarbonized economy. That's it. Thank you.
Two words about CESI. Yes, actually, we were incorporated 60 years ago as the National Research and Development Center for the development of the energy-related technologies in Italy. And across the years, we evolved from a purely research and development-based organization into an engineering and technical / regulatory consulting operation working all around the world. We are now operating in 40 countries through our offices from the Middle East to Latin America, Europe of course, and the US as well, where we a couple of years ago completed an acquisition of a company focused on cybersecurity, smart grids, and microgrids technologies, of course. And recently, as Professor Bollino was saying, we signed an agreement with the Saudi electricity company and the Saudi Aramco, actually to develop a technical consulting and research center in Dammam, Saudi Arabia. We typically work for utilities all across the world, or governments or regulators, and assisting them with any challenge related to the energy transition or any challenge related to the big electricity infrastructures, including market design, including power system studies, including the actual engineering and feasibility studies for main infrastructure. You see some of the projects that are currently going on in the world at this very moment, and as you can see, we operate from the renewables to thermal generation, and most importantly into the transmission and distribution field. In particular, we also have been involved in the digital meter program in Italy and in several, in many countries around the world, from Azerbaijan to Montenegro to Malta to the US to Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. So we really are, covering the full spectrum of activity in the energy sector. So let me give you, my view of what are the main trends if you look forward for our energy sector. The three keywords, I know this is pretty standard view, but the three keywords are decentralization, electrification, and digitalization of the sector. The first will be viewing all across the world a growing share of distributed small to mid-scale renewable energy generators that will be decentralized. That means that will be decentralized over the grid, and this will involve not only the transmission, but most importantly the distribution networks across the world. And this, as we will see in a few slides, will create several new technical challenges. On the other hand, we will see also an electrification of the sector, in the sense that many uses that are actually relying on fossil fuels, for instance, like heating, central heating, or residential heating, and most importantly, mobility will progressively and increasingly switch to electricity as a way to transmit energy. Second, managing all these decentralized resources and increased electricity use will require more and more digitalization of the sector, more and more artificial intelligence, more and more data to be collected, simply to manage the system in real time, see what that means in a few slides, and also to get all the information that you need in order to ensure the asset management of such a scattered around the place fleet of generation, demand response resources, etc., etc. Now, in this view, there are 3+1 key technical and economic milestones. This slide is taken from a research study done by Ernst & Young, and there are 3 points that I would like to. This shows basically the production cost, the generation cost, euro per megawatt hour, of a solar PV combined with batteries, and basically in comparison to the total cost of getting electricity from the grid, which is the red solid line, the black solid line, and the dotted line is simply the cost of transmission and distribution with no commodity, with no energy. Now the 3 milestones are the following. We are currently projecting that by 2022, 2023, we'll have the grid parity for small photovoltaic, residential-based photovoltaics combined with batteries. So that means that once you reach that grid parity, it becomes, of course, much more reasonable, for instance, if you don't have the grid, to install that particular solution rather than breaking the grid. The second milestone would be around 2025, 2026, where we do expect that the cost of the electrical vehicle, we were talking about mobility, will be competitive with the internal combustion engine. And here we are including not only the capex cost, but also the maintenance cost, so the full lifetime operational cost. Okay, and that would be another very important, trigger, because that will trigger an explosion in the stay with me in the diffusion of the electric mobility, of course. And the third milestone would be around 2040, 2045, around there, when the cost of the cost of the small-scale residential photovoltaic plant combined with a battery will be lower than simple cost of the transmission and distribution. That means that could potentially at least trigger the end of the grid. Okay, once the cost of producing electricity and storing electricity locally is lower than the fixed cost of bringing the grid, of having the grid, that could be at least potentially the end of the grid. Okay. There is another milestone, another technical number which is very important: the drop of the cost of the IoT technologies. The cost of a sensor of Internet of Things, so a sensor connected to the Internet, has dropped by 54% in the last 10 years. And we do expect that in 2020, the cost of a single average cost of an IoT sensor will be connected to the grid, will be 40 cents. Okay, so that means that the cost of having sensor really scattered around the infrastructure, any large infrastructure, will be absolutely minimal. Okay, and the availability of data and information will be absolutely huge, and will bring a flow of new artificial intelligence opportunities and applications into the electricity sector as well, and into the energy sector as well. Now, very quickly going through a few technical slides, but just to let you really understand, what renewables are bringing to the sector, to the electricity sector. Of course, renewables are, the future as we'll see in the electricity sector, the future of the energy of the world. But they impose new challenges, in particular to the operation of the system, in particular to the operation of the grids, okay? Both transmission and distribution. And the issue is their volatility. They are volatile, okay? It cannot be planned. And the typical electricity system has been, originally envisaged as something that was centrally planned and centrally managed, okay? And the future is going to be completely different. Okay. Here you can see a real example taken from Germany, for instance. The black line is the demand curve, hour per hour, day by day, and as you can see in green and in yellow, that's the production you get from solar and from wind farms. Okay. As you can see, demand is volatile, but still you can see a pattern. So there is a certain degree, at a very high degree, through which you can, forecast that kind of demand. Okay. Well, solar, solar is volatile, but you can see that also in solar, there are certain patterns, okay? For instance, there is day and night, which is certain, and of course there is also, seasonality, okay? So there are certain ways to get a better forecast of the solar production. Well, with wind, it's very different, okay? So the volatility of the wind farms tends to be very much higher than the other resources. And if you bring all this volatility into the system, you get a situation where you need to keep the system in balance, and you need a lot of flexible resources to keep with this volatility. Just to give you an idea, this is a real graph, 2016. This is taken from Italy. This is the load curve in Italy for this one day in 2016. And here is the thermal generation production. So during the day you have a lot of sun, a lot of wind in particular, but mostly a lot of sun, so you don't need thermal power, okay? So even if demand grows, you shut down, you decrease the power of your thermal generation plant. Now this is the forecast of the system in 2025. As you can see, the difference, the spread between the demand and the thermal generation load is huge, becomes huge. And that means that, at mid of the day, 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, you can't be in a position in Italy to have, no more than 10 gigawatt of power, thermal power in operation. That means, running at 15%, perhaps 20% load, okay? And then when the sun goes down, you have a huge run in the evening, okay? Where in a few hours, you have to recover 30 giga, okay? And that is a huge stress in terms of, the kind of plants that can provide and the kind of resources that can provide this flexibility in the system. So this is the challenge. How to cope with this challenge? How to cope with this challenge without the resources that we need for the flexibility? Well, there are many resources. And this is an area which, in my opinion, will be, together with the renewables, really the future in terms of technologies for our sector. And, many resources. Once again, first thing that you can think about bringing system flexibility is using the transmission. Okay? Making additional connections and additional transmission lines in order to interconnect countries, interconnect markets, and having the possibility of trading, okay, importing or exporting extra renewable energy, okay, that you don't need in that system, or import energy at the time you need. Okay, so what we are seeing in Europe, but also at the cross-continental scale, we're seeing many transmission interconnection projects flourishing. As CESI, we are operating in the interconnection between India, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan. We are operating in Latin America. There are many new lines connecting, plan to connect Northern Africa with Europe. Okay, one from Israel, another one from Egypt that will go through Cyprus and then through Greece, and operating on those lines. The Middle East itself, Saudi Arabia is planning to introduce new interconnections with their neighbor countries in order to export or import electricity and become is also a renewable powerhouse in the sector, in the area. Of course, storage will be also very much important in bringing flexibility. The decreasing cost of the batteries will be a major development. We do expect that the fall in the cost of producing electricity and storing electricity will follow a similar pattern as we've seen for solar panels or for microchips. Okay, so with economies of scale bringing very rapidly down the cost of storing electricity. We'll see a lot of potential in the demand side management, demand response. So this is, once again, related to IoT, related to the aggregation of loads, to the availability of applications and software applications that are able in real time to direct certain load center to decrease their load, or to the contrary, direct certain batteries scattered around the country. For instance, think about the batteries of the cars, okay? Moving electricity into the grid. Okay, we'll see, of course, many new technologies, or traditional technologies, but improved in the generation side, flourishing. I'm talking about micro peaking plants, micro turbines will be more and more not combined, but open cycle gas-fired plants to provide this kind of backup when the sun is not there and when the wind is not there. And another area that we will definitely see flourishing is what we call the sector coupling. So various technologies that allow you to use electricity or access electricity in other areas. For instance, producing hydrogen. So the whole area of P2X, power to something, okay? Could be hydrogen, could be water, could be whatever, okay? So a way to produce a chemical, okay, and store energy, producing that excess energy in that chemical, and then using that chemical back into the electricity, okay, to convert that chemical back into electricity to then, produce power when you need, okay? And same can be done, of course, with a fleet of electric vehicles, okay? You can use, through the aggregation, the batteries in the electrical vehicles that are connected to the grid as a way to store and supply electricity into the grid. So all these technologies will bring the possibility to the system to balance that and cope with that huge volatility. I don't want to get into the detail, this is pretty complex, I know, but just to make a long story short, this is an actual example of what could be and what complexity we will have in managing actually the balance between demand and supply. Once in the grid you have batteries, once in the grid you have demand response, once in the grid you have aggregations, etc., etc. I mean, the complexity of managing the grid will increase in a very, very material and very, very significant way. And of course, this will require not only technology, but I think also my colleague mentioned in the previous presentation, what will be required is a redesign of the markets, a redesign of the systems through which we manage, these flexibility resources. And I do believe that we will see also a huge shift in the profit pool in the industry. A lot of the profits will shift to the flexibility markets, and I think that would be pretty substantial consequence of the future of energy, and pretty substantial also in terms of business models for utilities and anybody operating in any electricity sectors. Just the last two slides. Of course, the grid, and I'm talking about transmission and distribution, will be the key enabler of this transition together with digital technologies, of course. SYMPOSIUM, which is the organization, European Organization of the Transmission System Operators, calls in the 10-year network development plan for almost 100 billion euros of investments to be carried out in mainly in transmission and distribution. And as you can see, of the total investments that are forecasted from 2017 to 2040, 40% are in the transmission and in the distribution. In the transmission, mainly because of new interconnections being built, as I was saying, to promote exchange of electricity, trading of electricity across borders, and bring through this way flexibility to the system, but also the distribution. Why the distribution? Concluding remark, concluding slide, because we will see, think about a huge increase in the load centers, and also in the generation centers that will be located into the distribution. Think about a huge shift to the electric mobility, electrical vehicles, Think about charging stations being scattered around the country. Think about, the need to repower, to recharge your car once you're back home, This will require additional investments in order to increase the power transformers capacity, to increase the power and the stability of the distribution grid. So many investments will go into the grid. And also, a new problem for the distribution grid, to be actually a dispatcher of electricity, because typically distribution was required to bring electricity to the final customer, but because of the batteries of the electric vehicles, because of the renewables, because of the batteries associated with the renewables, more and more the distribution operator will also offtake electricity from these scattered resources. So the problem also, for the first time at the distribution level, will be to manage demand and supply, and manage with the dispatching of resources. So to conclude, huge changes and transformation in the industries ahead of us. What is required is new hardware, new software, because as I was saying, there will be a flourishing of artificial intelligence, big data, and data analytics application. But it will also require, as a key enabler, another type of software, the software of good regulation, of good market design, and renewed markets that will be absolutely crucial to make this happen. Thank you.
Presentations are directed from the please.
Hello. Yes, after Codazzi, I knew that it's so clear, wide, that I think that we have two advantages. One, that I can skip my 5 pages in 2 slides, and so this is very good. And the second, I think that I remember when I my aim was what I can do. So you just see that in front of you, you are plenty of opportunity to invent something new, and let's say the scenario at least is clear enough. Then, as we just saw between the two microphones, now that this should be the winner, we are using the old cable technology, that this happened also in the real world. So something that you can trust in everything, and then something go wrong. But for this, of course, all the systems are improving. So I will just introduce in a few words Elettricità Futura, because I'm here also in the best of Vice President of Elettricità Futura, that is the largest Italian association of the electricity producer company. So are over 600 companies that form Elettricità Futura, and is the result of the merge of Axpo Rinnovabili, that was an association completely, let's say, focused for renewable energy producer, and Axpo Elettrica, that was an association in which mainly were associated company producing from fossil fuel, not only, but let's say mainly. So less than 2 years ago we merged, and because looking at the scenario that you just saw, of course everything is changing, and in the next year more or less this will happen. So we decided as a renewable producer to focus more on the market, on the new opportunity, and on the changes. If I have to try to translate for what we learned from what we heard this morning, we can imagine that the network is a little bit like, if I have to make a comparison, like the TV. So before it was like a TV, probably with one channel, so you can switch on or switch off your lamp or your TV, and you get something, and you can only get. So if you want, or like the water, so you can open, and so you get the electricity or the water, but you cannot put your water in the grid of the distribution. In the future, but is already now, we can inject electricity in the grid. So this is the first very big difference compared. We can go back only 10 years ago, in which the scheme was big central power, coal or gas, or hydro, big hydro, and the client could only use the electricity. So what we, I think, understood, and already everyone can build on his home a solar plant, can inject the electricity that doesn't use in the grid. So this will change, and because of the renewable energy, and I want to stress this, renewable energy is one of the solutions to decarbonize because of the climate change. So this is the main reason why we imagine that in 2030 62%, let's say over 60% of the electricity, and let's speak about Italy, will arrive from renewable sources. The second element that it's a little bit more clear is that we are pushing the the renewable energy also because of the quality of air, and this is very important, especially in the city, in the big city. So this is an element very important because climate change is a very big risk that anyway is going on, and but quality of air in Italy kill around 70,000 people each year. So if you compare with less than 4,000 in cars accident, so you understand that we are speaking of something that is almost 10 times bigger, and is not so. So there is a justification for big investment. Imagine how many investment we put in the cars for safety, seat belts, airbag, ABS, control of stability, and so on and so forth. Okay, so another element that I think that we have to consider and is the CO2 price, because to reach this target in a way is again for decarbonization, so we should enter in a system that will, let's say, speed up renewable energy, and the best way probably will be to create a market that really gives the right price of externality for CO2 and also for the pollution aspect of the fossil fuel, so NOx, APM especially. So this is important, and another aspect that is not very discussed yet, but I think that is very important, is that we have to imagine some kind of border adjustment tax for CO2. So if you look how Europe go and what we will reach by 2030 and what is doing the rest of the world, especially China, India and United States, we have really to think how to make a higher pressure on the decarbonization activity around the world. So in a way to find a way to give some kind of tax, carbon tax on the product that use a lot of energy produced not from renewable, I think at least, that will help to push all the world to use a cleaner energy. I think that to give another part of the problem is I make.
Okay, so thank you very much.
Well, we are not running that late. Let me tell you that all the parallel session will start after this, so we are running, 10-15 minutes delay, where everything is acceptable. Questions from the floor for our distinguished speakers, or reactions from the speakers?
I just want to thank you, Matteo and Agostino, for their speeches, because they were really interesting. As a renewable operator, I think that we have one important takeaway from this session, and it is that energy transition in the power sector can be done through intermittent renewables. That's something really important. The second point is flexibility, and as Matteo has highlighted, flexibility is something that will be paid more in the future. It's something, there will be a shift, a real shift in the revenues coming to this kind of activity, let's call it activity. An important point, because I really love the presentation of Matteo, I think it's the role of the grid. Because we will have growing investments in the grid at the transmission level, at the distribution level, till a certain point. It won't be forever, because as Matteo was highlighting, we will have a point where the cost of the technology, of the renewable technology, will be so cheap and the technology will be so reliable, with storage system included, that we won't have any further necessity of investments of the grid or any need of grid at all, which is, I mean, a new perspective, and it's something that we should think about. Thank you.
Yes, or dematerialization of the grid. No grid at all, I think, is too futuristic. Only Rifkin was speaking about that. Dematerializing the grid, the way we know it now, making it more flexible and multiple access. That would be the challenge.
I was meaning at the grid as we know it now.
It's very far away in the future, and of course, you know, it's something that will happen, but you know, don't ask me when.
Question, please.
Okay, I'm Franco Del Manzo from Unione Petrolifera. I have two questions. The first question is related to the cost of energy. Do you think that the 2030 target for renewables in Europe will be met with the reduction of energy cost for consumers and industry? This is the first question. The second is why the new capacity in renewable in Italy dropped dramatically during the last years, after some years in where the big increase in capacity in renewable capacity we have testimonied in 2010, 2011.
What do you think about this?
So the second one, I answer first to the second one. I think that the reason is that the market, so to invest, we are waiting to understand in which frame we can do it so. And it's not in the reality, I think, anymore about a question of incentives, because price, the last big price is below the actual cost of energy. And we imagine, probably we are not so happy about this, that the next bid that will be possibly held in the first part of next year again will be significantly below the spot price of energy. And the bid implies to have a fixed price for 20 years. So in a way it's clear that is not anymore a question of incentives, but is a question of understand what will be the rules. And let's say we have also a question for, let's say, a smaller company compared with NL, that to find the finance to make the investment. Of course, we are arriving from a system in which was clear the offtake for 20 years, paid more or less by the government, so by the GSA. And so in this case, and I'm discussing a lot with the banks, and we are trying to explain to the banks that they have to enter in a mentality that cannot be like it used to be, and they lend money to many companies that they don't have a contract for selling the products more than 3 or 6 months. So this is, I think, a very big switch in mentality, but I think that will happen in Italy. Anyway, another important aspect that we are pushing is also the PPA that has been mentioned. So the long-term contract of buying and selling energy. So this is something also important. We are not in Italy at all in this mentality. Abroad this already exists. For example, I have experience in Brazil when it's normal to sell electricity for 5 years, so I do contract for 5 years, and so it's reasonably possible to get finance. So this is something that we imagine that the government should help the market to start. So this is a question. The first question was about
The cost of energy in 2030.
So I think that the cost of energy, in my opinion, will not be very low, because the cost of generation will be in a way low. Then there is a lot of discussion about the new market that we have to design, because renewable energy, solar and wind, is true that they have a marginal cost near to zero, but it's also true that they have a huge important capital investment. So the structure is very different from gas, that they have, say, the cost of the fuel that can be more or less 50%, and the other is the cost of our depreciation and the running cost. But anyway, the real cost will be to have all the digitalization, all the new system that we have to put in place. So I guess that the price will not be lower, even if the real cost of generation could be lower.
Question? Last one.
Yeah, I have a question to the panel. So we are living in a moment in which we have changed the paradigm, and we are linking the energy security, the grid security, with the security and the protection of the investments on fossil fuels, in order to guarantee to protect the grid, to reach the balances on the grid, because we have a lot of non-programmable sources. So I would like to know what is your opinion on this, if we are missing something, because the guarantee, the security, the grid security should be guaranteed by renewables. I mean, in the future, with this new objective that we have. So what are we missing? Is something in digital? I don't know. What is your opinion on this? Because in the mid-2000s, we guaranteed the grid security with renewables, with pumping plants. So now we changed totally.
Please.
Try to address. I think I with a mix, as I was showing, I think through a mix of solutions. I don't think there is a single magic bullet there to solve the problem. Of course, there's a variety of technologies, interconnections first, demand response, and batteries. I think either standalone or together with utility scale, or together with residential photovoltaic plants, or within electric vehicles. Those will be definitely technologies that will produce supply. Of course, there is another issue. Managing all this complexity and all this flexibility will require, as I was saying, additional digitalization and additional digital technologies to be brought to the sector. So another trend that we will see is definitely an increase in the importance of the cybersecurity for the sector. Okay, more and more the system, real-time operation will be relying on digital technologies, the more cybersec will be absolutely critical to maintain the security of the sectors.
I agree with Matteo, there is no silver bullet. I think that, nevertheless, the real point we have not yet reached a conclusion on is the role of gas in securing the electricity systems in the future. In particular, I refer to the capacity remuneration mechanism and all the regulation aimed at ensuring adequacy in the electrical systems. There is a huge debate in Europe on the role and the dimension of this mechanism, and I think it is difficult now to define a definitive solution. I think it will depend on the actual development of technologies, in particular on the storage side. But as you were saying, it's something we have not yet defined a real definitive solution. It's something we'll have to work on, and it depends on a number of factors which might or might not develop in the future. I don't know if I completely answered to your questions, but that's really my point. I think we have not a definitive answer, so it's something that we'll see develop in development in the years to come.
Please.
Very shortly, I think that with digitalization we succeed to manage the smartphone. I think that Codazzi will manage the grid without any problem.
Okay, so I guess we can get to an end. Before I make a very short announcement, we were saying to all the distinguished academic, especially researchers here, that there is a possibility, if you want, to submit your paper to the energy transition. This is a journal of which I'm part of the editing board. The energy transition is a young journal published with the Springer group. We will assure you, of course, fast track, not acceptance, because that goes to the referees. But if you're interested in this journal, we've announced this through the seminars, but I wanted to repeat it in a plenary session in front of you. Talk to me, talk to Anka. It would be possible to, consider it if you like it. You will see it on the website, Energy Transition Springer Journal. It is edited in Saudi Arabia, by the way, in Riyadh. So it looks at Middle Eastern transition countries. It's very interesting. More than European one looks at the rest of the world. And that's sorry that I've taken